Alright, so back on the 1440, the next thing we're going to tackle is this oil leak over here. So we've had an oil leak on this thing since we got it, and it basically was just soil in this whole side of the case here. And I finally decided to take a deeper look and see if I could figure out where it was coming from and figure out how significant it was, because I couldn't really tell until I cleaned it up. But I got it cleaned up and then came in here, took the PTO off, and took that plate right there off. See if I can get this to stay in position there. Alright, so yeah, I took this plate off here, took off the PTO and serviced it. You'll see that in another video. And then back in there, you can see, and you probably can't see now, but yeah, you can actually see the head gasket right up above that shroud. It's not leaking from the head gasket. It's actually leaking from that crankcase bolt right there, the front cover or rear cover bolt, which was loose. It was actually loose. So I tightened it up, checked the other ones, none of the other ones were loose. I tightened that up, and it significantly decreased the leak. However, it's still leaking. So what I've got right now is a little piece of pig pad in there just to prevent it from soiling the engine anymore until I, unfortunately, need to pull the engine and reseal that crankcase cover. I could do it with the engine in the tractor, but looking a little deeper at this, this is just the way these things go, you know, like something with this age, you start doing one thing and then it just, the mission creep is so easy to get into on these things. So basically, let me get another light and I'll show you. I think we've got a little bit of a crank seal leak in the back too, or in the front of the engine. So this crank seal here, man. So that one's been replaced, and you can see they staked the seal in there so it didn't pop out. All right, so whatever, not a big deal. But if we look back in here, see that wetness right there? Those are the stator windings, and if they look that wet, it's probably because the crank seal's leaking. And what I don't want to have happen is to have this thing be put under a load, get the oil nice and hot, get the engine nice and hot, and then start blowing out the front seal there. So I think the plan is to pull the Vanguard out of there so I have better access to everything, reseal the entire engine top to bottom, including the head gaskets and including all the weird Briggs related seals like the dipstick seal, the oil cap seal, the governor shaft seal, the other dipstick tube seal, which is right there, that guy. I'll replace that dude. I like to seal these motors up really well. And then the thing is if we go that far, it's going to be really hard not to justify going into the case, because we already have the sump cover off, and putting in new rings and maybe pistons and rods. I don't know. I really hadn't planned on doing this, because the timeline for this project in my head was about 3 weeks, but it just needs so much. So I think, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, that mission creep's hard to argue with. Once you take an engine out and you get it up on the bench, you know, you get into this time fallacy where you're like, oh, well, you know, might as well do it while it's out kind of deal. I don't want to have to pull the engine again. And, you know, these engines are super easy to pull on these Cyclops tractors. And the Vanguard's probably the easiest engine to pull, because it's like the form factor is so small. It's just a light, small, easy to get to engine. You know, like all the bolts are easy to get to. You know, there's no fiddling around and stuff. Like on a model without hydraulic lift too, this, or power steering, there's like all this room back in here. There's really no reason to consider doing an engine rebuild just because you pulled the engine, but I've done another one of these Briggs before and just resealed it, so it basically just did the head gaskets, and then aside from the head gaskets and all the other seals, I didn't go into the case. I mean, I had the sump cover off, but I didn't pull rods, I didn't pull pistons or anything like that. And I ended up regretting it on that engine because although it helped with the oil consumption issue, it didn't solve it. You know, it didn't leak anymore, but so one of the reasons, now the thing runs really good. The engine runs really well, as you've seen on other videos, and it turns that 48-inch deck no problem with 14-horse motor. And we did a compression check. I think we're a little low on compression, but we're not terribly low. I'm not sure if Briggs even publishes what the compression should be, but we got 142 over here and we had 150 on that side. I'd like to see it closer to the 170 range, but I don't have enough experience with the Vanguards to really know what's an acceptable number, and I don't think they publish the data. So, but anyway, you know, like for anyone else, they'd be like, oh, the engine just runs fine, it's got a little oil leak, who cares, just leave it alone. Yeah, for an average person, the oil leak is not significant enough right now that it's really, you know, you may have to top off a little bit between mowings, but not much. But the bigger concern for me is, you know, if we could reseal this thing, we go through all that effort of, you know, you got to clean the tins, just this all the cleaning work that goes into it. If we're going to get that far, then we might as well address this issue here, which is that you know, there's excessive blow-by. And you can see I've got a little piece of Tygon fuel line taking the breather tube and extended it further into the intake so it doesn't soil the, you know, so it doesn't soil the air cleaner. But yeah, we want to fix the blow-by issue no matter what, whether we do it before the mowing season starts or we do it after. You know, it doesn't really matter. It's going to have to be solved one way or another, and you know, if I've got all the tins clean, I might as well just take care of the motor the way it should be. I didn't plan on it. We've got a list over here of things to do for the revival, and yeah, engine is not going to get done yet. So basically, we're not going to do that. We're going to focus on all these other things and then come back to the engine, because I have a customer's engine on the bench that needs done before this. So yeah, I don't want to have two engine teardowns going on simultaneously. There's just not enough room for it in here, and really, you know, the customer's engine needs to be done before this. So anyway, that's the update. Found an oil leak. It got a little more complicated, and I think the plan for the 1440 is going to be to pull that engine and rebuild it, unfortunately. So, or fortunately, as the case may be, because you know, rebuilding engines is fun. So stick around. I think this one's going to be a little bit more detailed than we expected, but hopefully it'll be good content for everybody, and we'll all learn something along the way. So thank you for watching, everyone. We really appreciate you.